So in our lesson, dealing with decimal operations and equations with decimals, my objective is that you're going to be solving equations involving decimals. That includes adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So let's review in your notes, class. In your notes, we're going to add and subtract decimals. So go ahead under review, solve the first problem with decimals. Once you check the addition one, solve the subtraction one. Now notice that when I did the subtraction problem, I put a 0 in front of the decimal to show a placeholder there. That is what I'm going to ask of you to place there, is a 0 in the answer to show that it is 0 in the 1 spot. Now, we're going to take what we know about adding decimals with positive, and now we're going to work with negative. In finding the sum for these two numbers, how do you know what your answer is going to be, class? What is it going to be? A what? Negative. Because a negative plus a negative is a negative. So go ahead and add these two just as you would regularly. Your answer is going to be negative 9 4/10. Next, we're going to find the difference. Before you can solve this, you need to remember your rules for subtracting. You are going to add the opposite. So now I have a negative and a positive. I'm adding. So if you remember in your rules, you are going to now subtract them. You're going to line the decimals up and subtract. Because the larger absolute value is a positive number, the answer will be a positive number. Now we're going to practice. In number 1, they're both negative, so just add them as you would normal decimals, and the answer is going to be negative. I want you to work these out in your notes. Number 2, they're different signs, so you will subtract. You take the absolute value of the larger, and that will be the answer, the sign in your answer. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to check my work, and I'm going to make sure I have the correct sign in the answer. Then I'm going to move on to number 3. I'm subtracting, so I'm going to add the opposite. Line your decimals up. Again, checking my work, also making sure my sign is correct. That look a little nicer. Now, we're going to review when we multiply decimals. The difference in multiplying decimals and adding decimals. When you add decimals, as we did in these examples, you line the decimals up and then add. When you're multiplying decimals, you set the problem up, multiply as you would whole numbers, and then the number of decimal places that are in each factor is the number of decimal places that you move over in your answer. Let me give you a model of this. We have 0.023 times 3.6. Multiply that as you would whole numbers. Do that now. I multiply that just as I would a whole number. Now, in this factor, there are 3 decimal places. In this factor, there is 1. So I'm going to move my decimal over 4 places in my answer. So my final answer is going to be 0.0828. Now we're going to move on to division. Let's set this up. It is 7.848, and it is being divided by 0.24. This is your dividend. This is your divisor. Your divisor always has to be a whole number. So you will multiply it by 100, the dividend by 100, move your decimal up. So now your problem is 24 going into 784.8. 24 will go into 78 3 times. Bring down your 4. 24 will go into 64 2 times. You need to be very organized in your lining up of your decimals in order to get the correct answer. You need to line up each digit correctly. Now, we're going to be using our rules for decimals as well as our rules for multiplying with negative and positive numbers. So in A, is my answer going to be a negative or a positive, class?
Negative.
Negative. Go ahead. Multiply as you would whole numbers. I'm going to go back and check. My answer should be a negative. B. Class, will my answer be a negative or positive? Good. Do not add a 0. Write it as it is written, as it is given to you. I have 3 in this factor. Excuse me, I have 2 in this factor, 1 in that factor. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go back and check. A negative times a negative is a positive, so there's my answer. Now we're going to use the same rules with negatives and positives. Is our answer going to be a positive or a negative, class? Positive. So go ahead and set this up and divide. Multiply that by 10. Multiply that by 10. Bring my decimal up. Now I'm ready to divide. again, before I move to the next, I check to make sure that my sign is correct. That. Is D going to be a positive or a negative, class?
Well, negative.
Negative, because a negative times a negative equals a positive. On these, I'm going to ask you to work 4, 5, and 6. Come back and check your answers. Just pause the video, work these, and then come back and check your answer. Now we're going to use the steps that we have done before in solving addition and subtractions equations. So we're going to be using inverse operations. Class, what is the inverse operation for addition?
Subtraction.
What is the inverse operation for subtraction?
Addition.
So we're going to be using those for these next examples. So in A, we're wanting to isolate x, so we're going to subtract 4.7 from each side. Now, notice all we have left is x on the left-hand side. But notice you have 3 5/10 minus 4 7/10. They're different signs. So you come out to the side. You subtract 4 7/10 minus 3 5/10. 1 2/10 is your answer. If it will help you, you can do this also. We're going to be adding the opposite. So either way, if this helps you solve it, either way. Now, is my answer going to be a positive or a negative? Negative. Go ahead and do B on your own and come back and check your answer. Okay, hopefully you checked in example 3, you checked B, wrote out it horizontal if you need to, linear to solve it, and your answer is going to be positive. Go ahead and do 8, 9, and 10 on your own and come back and check your answers. Please check your 8, 9, and 10. Again, if you need to write it linear, horizontal, in order to help you understand what operation you're going to be doing and how what sign your answer is going to be, please do that. Again, 11, 12, 13, work these practice. The reason why we're having so many practice ones is each one is using a different technique or a different way to answer it. These are practicing for your homework, so go ahead and answer these and come back and check your answer. Remember, our goal is to isolate the variable using inverse operations. Woo, inverse operations. Now we're going to be solving multiplication and division problems. So in A, what are we going to divide each side by, class? Negative 6/10. B, what are we going to do to each side? By -8. Here we go for it. Come back and check your answer. Please check your answers. Please check your signs. Notice in the notes how I want you to indicate division and multiplication. Go ahead and practice 14, 15. Come back. Check your answers. Be sure and show you are dividing each side by a certain number, multiplying each side by a certain number. Go ahead and check your answers again. Always go back and check your signs. Let's go ahead and work on the inverse operations for 16 and 17. Now, as you're checking 16, you're doing the inverse operation of division, which is multiplication. So you multiply each side by 11 5/10 to each side. Check your sign. 17, Again, we're trying to isolate the V. So we were dividing. Inverse operation is multiplication. We work them out to the side and then bring our answer down. Now we're going to use what we've learned so far in a word problem about a chipmunk. When a chipmunk hibernates, its heart rate decreases, its body temperature drops, and the chipmunk loses weight as its stored body fat is converted to energy. In this example 5, we're going to write and solve an equation. When a chipmunk hibernates, its weight decreases by 0.31 pounds. After hibernation, a chipmunk weighs about 0.35. Find the weight of the chipmunk before hibernation. So it's asking you in this problem to write and solve an equation. So I'm going to use the variable W for weight. We're going to determine what the weight of the chipmunk was before hibernation. So if he loses 0.31 and it ends up at 0.35, we're going to do the inverse operation and we're going to add 0.31 to each side. And his weight is going to be 0.66 pounds before hibernation. Again, when you're having a word problem, you need a word in your answer, and you also need to write and solve out a problem for the correct answer. You use an automatic teller machine, an ATM, to deposit a check for $122.94 into your savings account. Your receipt from the ATM shows a balance of $286.59 after the deposit. Find the balance your savings account has before the deposit. Oops, sorry. So your balance in your savings account before your deposit was $163.65. Recapping of this lesson, you added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided with decimals. You used your rules with negative and positive to make sure that your answer was correct.